The Switch and Switch 2 have built up one of the most solid game libraries of any Nintendo console, and at this point, there's no shortage of genuinely great games to play on them. Whether you're into RPGs, action games, horror, or just something to mess around with on the couch, this list has you covered. Lies of P Complete Edition. The game takes the Pinocchio story and drops it into a dark, collapsed Belle Epoque city called Krat, where the automatons built to serve humanity have gone rogue and started slaughtering everyone. You play as P, a puppet created by Geppetto, who wakes up in the middle of all of it and has to survive, find his creator, and figure out what's actually happening. The story is delivered in the From Software-style item descriptions, NPC dialogue, environmental clues, but it's less abstract than its inspirations. The combat is tight, built around a weapon assembly system where you mix blades and handles from different weapons, and a parry mechanic that a lot of the bosses are specifically designed around. The lying system lets you make choices that affect NPC outcomes and lead to different endings. The Complete Edition includes the base game and the Overture Prequel DLC. Star Fox on Switch 2 is a full remake of Star Fox 64, rebuilt from scratch. The core structure is exactly what you'd expect a rail shooter, where you pilot Fox McCloud through branching levels across the Lylat system to stop Andross from destroying everything. What's different this time is that the presentation got a serious upgrade. Fully voiced cutscenes, redesigned characters, a fresh orchestral score, and a story that actually gives the characters proper arcs, instead of just one-liners stitched together by mission selection screens. The gameplay holds up exactly as it should. R-Wing combat, Landmaster sections, the Blue Marine underwater levels, all intact and updated. The branching path structure means your performance during missions directly affects which routes open up, so replaying it to see different paths is genuinely worthwhile. There's also a new 4 vs 4 online multiplayer battle mode added for this version, which gives the game some extra legs beyond the campaign. Dragon Quest VII Reimagined is the third time this game has been made original on PS1, Remake on 3DS, and now this. Square Enix rebuilt it with a diorama-style art direction using Akira Toriyama's iconic designs, updated gameplay pacing, and a streamlined story that cuts down on some of the original's more notorious friction. The premise is that you and your childhood friends discover stone fragments that open portals to sealed-off eras of history. The world as it exists now is basically empty islands that should be populated aren't, and it's your job to travel back in time, fix what happened in each area, and restore them to the present. It's a turn-based RPG at heart, with the classic vocation system letting you build your party through class combinations over time. The diorama art style gives it a distinct look that separates it from modern RPG aesthetics, and the updated pacing means you're not grinding through 8 hours of setup before anything interesting happens.
I think I'm done for.
Splatoon Raiders is a spin-off that takes the series in a different direction. No competitive multiplayer, full PvE adventure. The story follows Deep Cut, the pop stars from Splatoon 3, who are heading to the Spearhalite Islands looking for treasure to pay off a massive debt, facing all of Splatsville. Their helicopter gets taken down by a storm, and they spend months stranded, building a makeshift barge and planning how to raid the islands for loot. You play as the mechanic, their pilot, and the four of you work together, exploring the archipelago, fighting increasingly dangerous waves of salmonids, collecting gear, and slowly uncovering the mystery of what the islands actually are. The gameplay loop is raid-based. Head out, fight enemies, collect loot, upgrade your weapons and gadgets, repeat. It borrows elements from Salmon Run and Side Order, but builds them into a more structured campaign. Up to 4 players can play, co-op, online, or local.
Best part? You can use them together. It'd be nice if that made things easier, though. So to recap, do not underestimate.
Super Mario Party Jamboree is the most complete Mario Party game Nintendo has made in years. It launched on the original Switch in 2024 and serves as the flagship party title for that platform. The game brings back a large board selection, a substantial roster of characters, and a huge number of minigames, over 110 of them, which is the biggest count in the series. There's a new mode called Jamboree Tours that sets up extended, team-based play across multiple boards and adds some structure beyond the standard board game format. Online play is included, and the game takes advantage of motion controls for certain minigames. It's still the same format people either love or tolerate from Mario Party, but the sheer volume of content here, compared to recent entries, makes it the best pickup if you're getting one for a group. It works on Switch 2 via backward compatibility without any issues. Metroid Prime Remastered came out in 2023 and holds up as one of the cleanest remasters Nintendo has ever put out. The original GameCube game is one of the best first-person exploration games ever made, and the remaster keeps everything that made it work while significantly overhauling the visuals. The game puts you on the planet Talon 4 as Samus Aran, tracking down space pirates who are experimenting with Phazon, a mutagenic alien substance. The world is built for exploration. Scanning enemies and artifacts fills in the lore. Each area has a distinct visual identity, and the movement system with the morph ball and various beam weapons makes traversal genuinely satisfying. The dual-stick control option added for the remaster modernizes it without breaking anything. It runs well on both Switch and Switch 2. If you've never played the original, this is the version to play. Getting Cyberpunk 2077 running on a handheld at all is an achievement, and the Switch 2 version does a reasonable job of it. This is the complete package base game plus the Phantom Liberty expansion, set in Night City, the open-world megalopolis where you play as V, a mercenary who ends up with a chip in their head containing a dying legend's consciousness. The story goes deep into corpo politics, gang warfare, and what identity actually means when your mind isn't entirely your own. On Switch 2, quality mode runs at 1080p and 30 frames per second. Performance mode targets 40 frames per second. The Phantom Liberty sections are more demanding and see more frame rate variance. Mouse controls via Joy-Con are supported, and cross-save with other platforms works if you want to continue on PC or console. It's not the best way to play Cyberpunk, but it's a functional and impressive port of a genuinely great RPG. Link's Awakening on Switch is a remake of the 1993 Game Boy game, rebuilt with a soft, toy-like visual style that gives everything a miniature diorama quality. The story is self-contained and deliberately strange. Link washes ashore on Koholint Island after a storm, and has to find 8 instruments to wake the windfish and escape. The island is small by Zelda standards, but it's dense and full of secrets, hidden passages, and callbacks to other Nintendo games that were surprising in the original and still land here. The dungeon design is tight and inventive, with a chamber dungeon feature that lets you rearrange rooms from completed dungeons into custom configurations. It's shorter than the big 3D Zelda games, but it earns every minute. The remake is faithful to the original while making it feel current, and it runs smoothly on both Switch and Switch 2. Three Houses launched in 2019 and remains one of the best entries in the Fire Emblem series. You're a professor at the Garreg Mach Monastery, and at the start, you choose which of 3 student houses to lead: the Black Eagles, Blue Lions, or Golden Deer. Each house has different characters, storylines, and outcomes, and the routes diverge significantly partway through, with some paths being much darker than others. The turn-based tactics gameplay is built on a class system where you build each student's skills over time and assign them roles through certification exams. Between battles, the monastery sections let you build relationships with students, fish, cook, and explore at your own pace. The social simulation elements are better integrated here than in most strategy RPGs. Each route takes 40 to 60 hours, and the routes are different enough that going through all 4 is worth it.
Is that all?
Mario Kart 8 Deluxe has been on Switch since 2017, and it's still one of the best kart racers available anywhere. The Booster Course Pass added 48 more tracks from across the Mario Kart history over several years, bringing the total to 96 courses. The base gameplay is fast, readable, and well-balanced across its difficulty settings. 4 items can be held, the roster is enormous, and the track variety covers enough ground that no 2 consecutive races feel like the same course. It's been available long enough that it's basically the default recommendation for anyone who needs a multiplayer game that works for any skill level. With Mario Kart World now out on Switch 2, This one steps back slightly in relevance, but if you're on the original Switch or just want the largest course selection available in one package, Deluxe still holds up. Pragmata spent years in development after being announced by Capcom in 2020, and the final product justifies the wait. It's set on a lunar research station that's been taken over by a rogue AI called IDUS. You control spacefarer Hugh Williams, assisted by a young android named Diana, as the two try to survive and find a way back to Earth. The defining mechanic is that you control both characters simultaneously. Hugh moves, shoots, and jumps in the standard action game sense, while Diana hacks enemy systems at the same time. Enemies are armored in ways that bullets can't penetrate directly, so you have to use Diana to expose weak points for Hugh to exploit, which creates a split-attention gameplay loop that's more intuitive than it sounds. The world is visually striking. Half-realized replicas of human civilization spread across the lunar surface. And the mystery of what happened there and what Diana actually is unfolds steadily. Kirby and the Forgotten Land is one of the most polished 3D platformers on Switch. It takes Kirby into a post-apocalyptic world where civilization has collapsed and nature has reclaimed everything. Shopping malls, highways, amusement parks, all overtaken, but preserved in a strange, quiet way. The story involves rescuing kidnapped Waddle Dees from the Beast Pack while uncovering why this world exists at all. The mouthful mode mechanic lets Kirby inhale large environmental objects, cars, vending machines, traffic cones, and use them as tools or weapons, which adds a layer of creativity on top of the standard copyability system. The game is accessible enough for younger players, but has enough optional challenge in the post-game missions and collectibles to give experienced players something to work toward. Co-op with a second player as Bandana Waddle Dee is seamless. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle from Machine Games gives you a first-person adventure that actually feels like Indiana Jones, heavy on exploration, puzzle solving, and using your environment creatively over direct combat. The story is set between Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Last Crusade, with Indy investigating the Great Circle, a pattern of ancient sacred sites around the globe that a mysterious fascist organization is exploiting. The game takes you across Egypt, the Vatican, Thailand, and other locations, each with their own dense environments full of secrets to uncover. Troy Baker plays Indiana Jones and does a convincing job. Combat leans on improvised melee and the whip rather than shooting your way through everything, which keeps it in tone with the source material. On Switch 2, it runs at a locked 30 frames per second in both docked and handheld modes, 1080p docked, 720p handheld, with DLSS maintaining stability.
You're good at this, Mr. Jones.
I know enough to get me into trouble.
Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition is the remaster of the original 2010 Wii game, and one of the best JRPGs you can play on Switch. The story follows Shulk, a young scientist living on the back of a giant creature called the Bionis, who witnesses an attack by mechanical beings from the rival Mechonis. After a tragedy, he discovers he can use a legendary sword called the Monado and can see visions of the future, which becomes central to both the combat and the plot. The world is enormous and built for exploration, with biomes that each feel like distinct ecosystems. The combat is real-time, with cooldown abilities and a chain attack system that rewards understanding party positioning and enemy weaknesses. The Definitive Edition added Future Connected, a shorter epilogue story that takes place after the main game. The game is long, 80 to 100 hours for a complete playthrough, but it earns the time investment. Donkey Kong Bananza is the first original 3D Donkey Kong game since DK64 in 1999, and Nintendo made it count. The setup is simple. A mining company called Void Company steals all the golden bananas from Ingot Isle, and DK gets sucked underground in the chaos. He meets a young Pauline, and the two head toward the planet Core, which legend says grants wishes. What makes Bananza work is the destruction system. Almost everything in the environment can be smashed, dug through, or torn apart, which makes exploration feel genuinely physical. Pauline's singing unlocks animal transformation abilities for DK, each with different movement and combat properties. The underground biomes are all visually distinct, and the game rewards thorough exploration with Banandium gems used to upgrade DK's abilities. Performance has some occasional dips in demanding areas, but nothing that ruins the experience. Animal Crossing New Horizons doesn't need much introduction at this point. It launched in 2020 and became one of the best-selling games on the Switch, running at over 45 million copies sold. You move to a deserted island, develop it over time, build relationships with animal villagers, fish, catch bugs, donate to a museum, and generally shape the island at your own pace. The game operates in real time, so seasonal events and daily activities rotate on an actual calendar. The update support added over several years after launch added substantial content, including swimming, new villagers, art gallery additions, and holiday events. It's as relaxed or as involved as you want it to be, and the multiplayer lets friends visit each other's islands for trading, shopping, or just hanging out. There's nothing quite like it in terms of low-pressure, long-term game design. Mario Kart World is the 9th mainline Mario Kart game, and the biggest structural shift the series has taken in a long time. The whole world is connected, rather than separate cup selections. You're racing across a continuous open map, with biomes ranging from deserts to ocean floors to cities. Time of day and weather conditions change during races, meaning the same track can feel different depending on when you're on it. New mechanics include rail grinding and wall riding, which add vertical options to familiar courses. Races support up to 24 players simultaneously. A knockout tour mode eliminates racers each lap until one person is left. Free roam lets you drive anywhere on the map at your own pace, discovering secrets and cosmetic unlocks. Some players felt the course count was lower than expected, and the free roam has divided opinions, but the racing itself is as good as the series has ever been. Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade on Switch 2 is an impressive port of a game that was already a high-quality reimagining. The story retells the first act of the original Final Fantasy VII. Cloud Strife, a mercenary ex-soldier, joins the eco-terrorist group Avalanche in Midgar to blow up Mako reactors controlled by the Shinra Corporation. What starts as a straightforward job spirals into something much larger involving conspiracies, the nature of fate, and Sephiroth, who shouldn't be appearing when the timeline says he should. The combat is real-time, with active battle mode elements, letting you switch between characters and use abilities and spells in the middle of fights. The Intergrade version includes the Final Fantasy VII R episode Intermission DLC, with Yuffie as the playable character. On Switch 2, the game runs at a stable 30 frames per second in both handheld and docked modes, with visual quality closer to the PS5 version than PS4. DLSS helps maintain resolution. Super Mario Bros. Wonder is the best 2D Mario game in years, and possibly the most creative one since the SNES era. Rather than building on the new Super Mario Bros. Formula of the past decade, Wonder strips the template back and fills it with ideas. The Wonder Flower mechanic transforms each course in a different way. Sometimes the entire layout shifts, sometimes enemies change behavior, sometimes the rules of the level completely invert. No two Wonder effects are the same. The badge system lets you equip passive abilities that change how you interact with levels, and different stages suggest specific badges to try. It's a game that constantly surprises you, which is rare in a franchise this established. Online multiplayer works with asynchronous ghost-style play that lets you see other players in your level without direct interference. Co-op is available locally. Launched October 2023 on Switch, backward compatible on Switch 2. The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. Hyrule has been destabilized by the return of Ganondorf in an ancient Gerudo form, and Link has to deal with the fallout across the surface, underground depths, and sky islands that have appeared above the world. The new mechanics Ultra Hand, Fuse, Ascend, and Recall interact in ways that create genuinely emergent solutions to problems. The Ultra Hand and Fuse systems in particular let you build contraptions and custom weapons from environmental materials, which opens up puzzle solutions and combat approaches the developers couldn't have scripted. The world is dense enough that you can spend dozens of hours in the depths or on the Sky Islands without touching the main story. It's longer and more mechanically interesting than Breath of the Wild, though some players felt the narrative moved more slowly. Super Mario Odyssey is the gold standard for 3D platformers on the Switch, and one of Nintendo's best games in years. Mario and his new hat companion Cappy travel across diverse kingdoms to stop Bowser's wedding to Peach. The capture mechanic, using Cappy to take control of enemies, objects, and creatures, is the heart of the game. Every kingdom introduces new capturable entities that change how you move through that area, and the game uses this constantly and inventively. The Moon collectibles replace traditional stars, and there are enough of them that dedicated players can sink over 100 hours into the game without running out of content. The kingdoms are large, detailed, and worth exploring thoroughly. The new Donk City section in particular is one of the best single set pieces Nintendo has designed in a long time. Pokémon Pokopia is Game Freak's collaboration with Omega Force, and it's a different kind of Pokémon game. You play as a Ditto, who has taken the form of a human, arriving at a barren wasteland where all the Pokémon and humans have disappeared under unclear circumstances. The goal is to build habitats, gather resources, craft furniture and tools, and gradually attract Pokémon back to the area. As Pokémon return and settle, they teach you new abilities based on their types that you can use in the environment. The progression is area-based. Each zone has an environmental level that unlocks new content as you improve it. Then you move on. The mystery of what actually happened to the humans and why the world is empty is the story thread that pulls you forward. It borrows mechanics from Animal Crossing and Dragon Quest builders, but feels distinctly Pokémon. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is the best game in the series, and one of the best JRPGs of the last decade. The story follows Noah and Mio, soldiers from two nations fighting a perpetual war on the world of Ionios, who discover that the conflict they've devoted their lives to is built on a lie. The world is massive and visually stunning, with zones that feel genuinely alive and interconnected. The combat builds on previous entries with the Ouroboros mechanic, letting paired characters merge into powerful combined forms mid-battle. The class system is deep enough to support hours of experimentation, and the party of 6 characters allows for meaningful tactical composition. The narrative is the most emotionally effective in the series. It deals with mortality, the meaning of life under constraints, and what happens when the systems people have accepted are built to exploit them. The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild fundamentally changed what open-world games look like. It launched with the original Switch in 2017, and still holds up as one of the defining games of the decade. Hyrule has been devastated by Calamity Ganon, and Link wakes from 100 years of stasis with no memory, tasked with reclaiming his past and stopping the evil that's taken over Hyrule Castle. The freedom is total. You can go straight to the final boss after the tutorial if you want. The physics and chemistry systems let you interact with the world in ways that weren't scripted, and the emergent problem-solving this creates is still unique years later. Climbing anywhere, cooking for buffs, using the environment as a weapon, it all holds together with unusual internal logic. The 120 shrines give you structured puzzle content whenever you want it, and the 4 divine beasts are substantial dungeons with satisfying mechanical hooks. Resident Evil Requiem. FBI intelligence analyst Grace Ashcroft, daughter of Alyssa Ashcroft from RE Outbreak, is investigating a series of mysterious deaths across the US, all linked to former Raccoon City survivors. The trail leads her back to Renwood, a city neighboring the ruins of Raccoon City, and eventually into the ruins themselves. Running a parallel thread is Leon S. Kennedy, now a veteran DSO agent, pulled back into the same nightmare. The two protagonist structure uses Grace for vulnerability and first-person survival horror tension, then switches to Leon for third-person action with the combat confidence of a player who's been through this before. The Elpis virus, the overarching mystery, and the callbacks to classic series lore are handled well without being inaccessible to newcomers. On Switch 2, the game targets 60 frames per second, hitting it in contained areas and dropping to the 40s and 50s in demanding sequences.
Leon can parry an opponent's attack, then strike to break the stunned opponent's stance in close quarters combat.
Between the original Switch and the Switch 2, there's a genuinely deep library here. Probably the strongest Nintendo has put together in a long time. Drop a comment if there are games you'd move up or down, and subscribe if you want more coverage. See you in the next one.